Conversations across time. 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 Across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across.
Good evening and welcome to Conversations Across Time, the program that allows you, the viewer, to participate and watch conversations between historical figures from different time periods, hence Conversations Across Time. Tonight, our guests are seated to my right, former state representative Babette Josephs. Welcome, Babette.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seated next to Babette is the fourth president of the United States, one of the founders of this country, President James Madison. Welcome, President Madison.
Good evening, ma'am.
Seated next to President Madison is one of our favorite guests, El Presidente FIdel Castro. Welcome, Mr. President.
Buenos noches.
And seated next to President Castro is the man that is most responsible for just about everything that is in this studio. You know him as the genius of Menlo Park, better known as Mr. Thomas Edison. Welcome, Mr. Edison. What a pleasure. Now, tonight we will discuss an issue that confronts us today. Social Security. Social Security. What is Social Security? Is there a need for it today? And indeed, if you're under 30 years old, you probably think that Social Security is not necessary. So we want to discuss this issue, and we'll give you some background information. The Social Security law was passed in 1935, 78 years ago. Its purpose was to provide benefits to people 65 and over. The benefits came from money they worked for and earned, but the money is collected by their employees. Tonight, we will evaluate the pros and cons of Social Security. So I'm just going to start, I guess, at the easiest point and say, and I'll throw it out to the panel, is there a need for Social Security?
Well, you know, Ms. Crawford, nobody questions the constitutionality anymore of Social Security. The most retrograde politician you can think of in the world, I won't say any names, but everybody has that person in his or her mind, is frightened to death to question anything about Social Security. So I have to say the answer is absolutely yes. And it's so much ingrained now after 78 years, it feels to us as if we've had Social Security for thousands of years. And it's done what it is supposed to have done, which was to save old people from living out their declining years in abject poverty. But I expect that the fourth, I was close, would have disapproved of it very violently.
Most certainly, Madam. When I and my colleagues in the Constitutional Convention in 1787 sat down to write the new Constitution for this nation, we set forth a Bill of Rights which outlined the rights of the citizen, and in the making of the Constitution, we delineated specific authority to the federal government, which is national defense, foreign policy, and the common currency. Yes, the post office and the common currency. And in the Bill of Rights, we had the 10th Amendment, which stated specifically that those duties of government which were not directly and explicitly assigned to the federal government should be left to the states. And so-called Social Security, as you call it, is not one of these duties enumerated to the states.
So it's your
To the
position.
federal government.
First of all, let's be fair to our viewers. You've not told them that the 10th Amendment was something that you introduced to the Constitution. So, I mean, let's just have full disclosure here, President Madison. Now, I guess what troubles me is when you make the statement that Social Security is, I want to use without the penumbra, not under the umbrella of what the federal government was allowed to do.
That is correct, madam. That is not the function of the federal government to provide so-called Social Security.
So is it your position the states should have done it?
How the states conduct their internal affairs outside of the realm of foreign policy and national defense and the common currency and the post office, such functions are best left to the states. We have agreed.
So let's be clear. So that if the notion of the general welfare of the people of the country is to be left to the states. Now let's just suppose, for instance, that in Pennsylvania, we've decided that there should be an old age pension, and New Jersey, they've decided that there should not. Would that not mean that elderly people from New Jersey who do not have access to old age pension would naturally migrate to Pennsylvania? I mean, how do you envision handling that?
We don't envision it. As I have stated specifically, it is the role of the federal government to provide for foreign policy, national defense, post office, and currency. Any other functions of government are left to the states, and how the states conduct their internal affairs in such realms as so-called Social Security, it is entirely left up to them.
This all went to the Supreme Court, though, as everything does in this country. And I think that Mr. Edison knows something about that because a shareholder of his company brought that suit.
There's a problem. Number one, if we permit the wages to be taken, the Social Security to be taken out of the person's wage, that they're going to complain, possibly go on strike, take the businesses down. What my responsibility would have to be at that time is to increase their wages to compensate for the deductions. Then the shareholders will start raising Cain. And the market, it will affect the market of any public company. We're responsible for a lot of things that you like. Electricity, lighting, movie cameras, the advent of television, and even computers. That was all done under my reign.
But you weren't against Social Security.
But I will say that I was against it because, to me, one of the things that I was against was socialism. And that smacked to me, and my friends, by the way, my contemporaries.
Let's talk about who your friends were. Please don't just say your contemporaries. Let's name names. The usual suspects, I might add. Henry Ford,
the Mellons, the Rockefellers, who became liberal as time went on, but they were at that time were my friends, and we hung out together. We played golf together. We all had homes on Jekyll Island, so off the Carolinas. And we talked almost every day, and the main subject we talked about in the restaurants and in the social hours was Social Security. Why do we need it? We're going to have a revolution of people 25 and much younger because they don't want to pay for it because they can't envision themselves getting older.
Well, most 25-year-olds
And that happens today with Obamacare. In all honesty, when I segue into that, I will tell you that Obamacare would have worked beautifully if it had followed the model of Social Security. It actually didn't because we live in a different time. And some of this time that we're living in, my companies were responsible for the development of many of the things that the United States and the world has access today. The Social Security, in our judgment, is an act of socialism which will affect, why don't we have health care, universal health care then? We didn't because that would have taken us to another degree.
We're working our way up to it. But in the meantime, in Cuba, they had it all.
Well, they're talking about limited people. We have more people living in our business area now than Cuba has entirely in its population.
That doesn't mean there's not any validity to the Cuban model.
These gentlemen have used words that are so elementary to their thinking. You were saying I, you were saying we. So you're French or you're island or whatever you're saying. But there are more people living in Cuba who are more healthy than people living in your state of New Jersey who have to squander and beg for adequate health care. And Mr. Madison, your idea for forming a government that is only responsible for parts of the people's welfare is ludicrous. That's what the word is called, you ludicrous?
My point, sir, is that the reason we have formulated the Constitution as we have done was due to the failure of the Articles of Confederation that were drawn up during our War of Independence.
Well, independence for whom? For whom?
Please let me finish, sir.
Very good.
And during the period of the Articles of Confederation, there was Shays' Rebellion, where a mob led by a militia captain terrorized the officials in the state capital, and that led us to come to the conclusion that excessive democracy was a danger to this new republic. That the howling of the mob could very well bring down the government, and the proper functions of government cannot be carried out by a hysterical mob. And we have come to the
Just
conclusion.
hysterical aristocracy, that's okay.
What was your revolution was for the people, was not for the people? Was for you and
for those people.
For your friends and his friends, that's what your revolution was about?
That's what the American Revolution was about, according to President Madison.
Yes, it was.
Oh, yes.
Certainly
the government
wasn't for people with brown or black skin, certainly wasn't for women.
The government of this country has to be left to persons with the education and knowledge of government, so as to conduct its affairs for the benefit of the entirety of the government, and not for this, that, or other
And that's
particular
what
interest
Benjamin
group.
Cardozo said when he found that the federal government could tax employers in order to make for the general welfare. That's what he said.
But
Exactly
I have
what you just said.
You know,
The
I
general-
want to do this. I want to ask, because President Madison, you've advanced some very troubling principles, and we're going to take a break and come back to you on this, because it does seem that from everything that you've said, the United States was created in its inception for people that look like you and Mr. Edison. But we'll take a break, we'll come back and ask Mr. Madison, President Madison, what he feels was the basis of the founding of this country, if not to take care of the aristocracy, the new monarchy, so to speak. So when we come back, we'll ask you to answer that question. Thank you.
Very well.
Here I am, waiting for a bus on a street corner when my friend Vivian drives by in a car and says, Babette, I want you. I need you. So I thought, sure, and I had a card with me, my business card. I gave it to her, and I thought, I probably won't hear from Vivian again for a while, but right away she emailed me, she called me, and now I'm doing her concept, which is really, really interesting to make history alive and to relate it to what's happening now in our country and our world. And Vivian dragged me into it. I can't say I really resisted too hard. And that's what I'm doing.
Before the break, I had asked or posed to President Madison what was his idea of the reason for the creation of this country, because it sounds very much like President Madison espouses that this country was created for the aristocrats. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to think about that. And so here we are back, and I'd like you to respond to that.
Well, madam, you must understand that as we have outlined the Constitution in 1787, you will not find the word democracy, because we did not find that to be an adequate form of government. That would have been any mob, any emotional mob at any given moment dictating the policy. We have come to the conclusion that it would be best that the administration of the government at the state and federal levels should be
State too.
Yes, should be allotted to those persons who have property in land and also slaves, who have had the education and leisure time to ponder and study the issues of the day, and not be swayed by the hysteria of the ordinary people on the street
Or women.
Yes, whatever. And we
I
believe
think,
it
in
is.
fact, when you enumerated property, and you said, I'm assuming you were talking about real property,
Such
and you were
as-
talking about personal property is what you considered slaves, and I am wondering if you didn't also mean women. I mean, did you not view women as personal property of men? Because during that time, it was just you guys in that room making these decisions.
Yes, it was, and that has always been the case from time immemorial, and shall always be so.
Wait a minute, shall always be so as pertains to women? Because
Shall
slavery
always
is
be.
no longer
As
existent.
it always has been, and as it always has been, madam, your gender will never attain state power and never
We'll be the
influence it.
president. We'll be the president. That's what I think, soon.
Mr. Edison, if you could shed some light on the subject in terms of equality for women in health and the assurance of people being able to live comfortably. Do you concur with Mr. Madison, Mr. President?
Well,
Madison?
I agree with some of the things he said, but I do think women should have the right to drive.
To drive.
To drive and to vote and to participate in businesses. I believe that strengthens the country. I believe,
Hooray for us. Boy, we have gotten out of those shackles.
and I also further believe that it would seem to me that women appear to be more capable than men of making good decisions.
For
As a
themselves.
businessman, no,
For themselves
well,
as
for
well?
themselves now, because we won't permit them to make it politically
For
or
men.
internationally. But as time comes on, I am certain that women will rebel and have a large voice in the workings and the mythology of what develops in our country.
Now, Mr. Edison, that's very interesting because I did not realize that you had such a differing opinion from President Madison.
Well,
I'm impressed, to tell you the truth, that you actually feel that women are capable.
Excuse me, but my wife told me to say that.
Okay.
I think that when you have a democracy, everybody should participate. Black, white, yellow, green, bright, not so bright,
Poor.
rich, and not so rich.
And poor.
We have to help each other. That's what it means. It strengthens the country. I am opposed, though, to socialism, which is a dirty word attached to democracy. And that has to be cleaned up, because we're attempting with the Social Security bills to become a socialist nation. And I feel that that's only the first of many bills
But
that will.
was there a revolution? Did people stop going to work? Did companies go down? Did civilization end as we know it because the Social Security bill passed?
No.
No,
Not at all.
no.
No.
Is
no,
any of that
no.
going to happen because the Affordable Health Care Act passed? No.
I don't think any of that's going to happen because, number one, it's become an ideology for people. It's the same things that's happening today overseas with people suicide bombers blowing themselves up because they believe they're going to a better place. Americans are developing kind of an attitude that it's based on political party lines instead of what's good for the country. And our power is in the hands of few people, not the general run of the people living every day that you cross and say hello to and you eat with and you go to the movies with. We don't really control our own destinies. We could, but we're so divided politically that this country could be stagnant for many years.
Now, what's particularly interesting is that from your vantage point of being a successful businessman and running your business before Social Security came into being, that now you, in our conversation across time, have had the ability to look at what Social Security has meant or does mean to so many seniors. And you're able to see that. Now that's particularly interesting when we contrast that with President Madison. President Madison, who firmly in his heart believes that it's the the post office, the national defense,
and foreign policy and currency and everything else is left to the states, as we have enumerated in the.
So wait a minute, I want to just stop you because it's the post office,
currency, foreign policy, military.
Foreign policy, and military. So that means, according to you, that there would be no Federal Bureau of Investigation to investigate crimes that happen in this country.
There would only be CIA.
Or CIA, yes.
There would be CIA, but there would be no FBI.
Oh, I know a lot about that.
You must understand that in our era, we were a primarily agricultural, agrarian economy. We have not yet developed industry and manufacturers.
You agree that the Constitution can possibly grow along with the country as the country changes, which is what the Supreme Court said when Edison's shareholder brought a suit that ended up right before the Supreme Court.
Now,
yes, you may, sir.
Thank you. First of all, my shareholders are a different breed than the people walking around in the street that you possibly meet. Our shareholders are people of means, frankly. And what you're saying here is that we had 13 countries. We didn't have 13 states because everybody was able to do their own thing. And that wasn't really the strength of our country as a power. We had no power when we were younger. As we got older, which is kind of tied into Social Security, we suddenly agreed that as we got older, looking back, we got smarter. And that's what's happening to Social Security.
We moved from farms to cities. We went from really everybody was white and almost everybody was Christian who could vote, who was free. We decimated the indigenous natives. We brought people from other continents who didn't have our skin color and we subjugated them. So everybody who was free was the same, was white, was agrarian, was a farmer.
Well,
I think
there were poor whites also. But I don't want to defend that policy because I think
it all changed.
It has changed.
And in keeping with that, because it all changed, as a person who sits here and believes that the beauty of the Constitution is that when things change, as Babette just mentioned, when things change, the Constitution is able to adopt. I think that that's exactly what...
A living document. It's a living document.
It's a living document. It's not a static thing. And I believe that that is precisely what Justice Cardozo meant when he talked about that we have to be concerned about the general welfare. And this is such an important conversation
didn't
because
Justice Roberts really echo that in a way
Of
when he
course.
said that it is within the power of the federal government to tax people in order to pay for generally for
Well, for defense,
health
for
coverage.
what else
Health
happens.
coverage.
It's not only health coverage, it's defense, it's all this education. Those are things that.
Education was never part of the Constitution,
I know,
but I agree with you, we
but
should do it.
It came as a result of the Constitution. It wasn't part of it.
Well, education was
Okay.
supposed to be local.
Well,
you know, but I
yes,
want
it
to
was-
say something
And
that's
then a
interesting about
Republican president puts a department.
yes.
right?
And I look at President Madison, who came up with this notion. He keeps talking about everything was deferred to the states. And when I hear these arguments today about states' rights and we should leave certain things to the states, it is very troubling to me because we would have we'd have the instance of people going from one state to the other just because one state has better benefits. And that doesn't seem to make sense for wanting to build a strong country. And Mr. Madison, what troubles me, you as one of the principal authors of the Federalist Papers, and the Federalist Papers were what you and your friends wrote and had published in New York, in the New York press, so that the country would agree that there should be a constitution and that the Constitution was going to assure that there would never be a monarchy and that there would not be this class system. Yet, by the same token, everything that you've said here tonight seems to indicate that while you might have written the document and may have been concerned about the ratification of the Constitution, by the same token, you were setting up a class, an aristocracy.
An aristocracy, madam, of talent and capability and education.
People like him that look like you.
Yeah.
Yes,
And-
if
and
you choose to
speak
say
like him
so,
and think
madam.
that way.
Yes, we are. Yes, you have to understand. I've been educated in the European Enlightenment, which stressed the Greek and Roman classics, among which were Plato's The Republic, and Plato, through the mouth of Socrates, enumerated the necessity of a class of people trained specifically in the art of government. The person on the
haven't seen
street
one
and
of
on the
them.
farm
Yes.
could not. A person trained who is living on a farm or on the streets of your city who might be trained, educated in this, that, or the other trade, could not possibly fulfill some function of government as is necessary.
You know, this is so interesting, and it always happens. We will have to take up this conversation across time again, because I am particularly interested to hear what El Presidente has to say about this patrician notion that you seem to represent. And quite frankly, that's not what this country, at least that's not what we're told it's supposed to be about.
It is the source of stable government, a class of people administering the affairs of state, and we expect lower
There's other
classes
things
people
besides
And
we
we
accept-
expect
we
lower
expect-
classes of people. Just do you hear yourself?
to entrust trust my class in the administration of government.
And with that, we are going to invite you back so that we can take up this conversation across time again, because your class of people is what has led to so many problems in this country. But
In
that
this world.
attitude is pervasive, and it's still going on. So again, we will invite our panel back so that we can take up this discussion again. I'm sorry, it always seems that we run out of time when we just get to a point where it's a very heated conversation. Thank you very much. Please join us again.
Across time, conversations 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 across time. 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 Across.